Mary, the mother of Jesus. What if she's not quite the figure we've been led to believe? What if, before the Virgin Mary ever wore her blue robes and glowed with divine light, another sacred woman was already worshipped in temples filled with incense and offerings? This woman, Isis, the ancient goddess of Egypt, held a place in the hearts of millions, just as Mary would later do in the Christian world. But could it be that the story of Mary is not the beginning, but a continuation of something much older, something that has been buried beneath centuries of dogma and history's edits? Could the mother of Jesus, the revered Virgin Mary, be the same sacred feminine that the people once knew as Isis, the goddess who cradled Horus and was crowned with a throne? As we step into this mystery, we'll explore how the essence of the divine feminine has transcended time, crossing from one world to another, echoing through the sands of Egypt and into the sacred texts of the New Testament. This is not just about religion. It's about rediscovering the forgotten truths of the divine feminine, buried deep in the very fabric of history, waiting to be remembered. And so, we journey through time, not to erase what came before, but to honor it, finding in the story of Mary a whisper from the past, gentle, persistent, and always present. Stay with me as we uncover the forbidden connection between Mary and Isis, a bond that stretches far beyond religion, one that speaks to the very core of our spiritual memory. Let's rediscover what the Church never told us and what history tried to erase, shall we? Mary and Isis, two names that echo through the corridors of time, two mothers whose love transcends the pages of history. But what if these two figures, seemingly from different worlds, are not so different after all? What if behind the veil of religious transformation, they share a deeper connection, one that speaks to the heart of the divine feminine? Isis, the ancient Egyptian goddess, was revered as the mother of Horus, the protector of kings, the embodiment of divine motherhood. In the grand temples of Egypt, she was worshipped as a goddess of healing, magic, and wisdom, offering protection and guidance to those who sought her favor. She was the one who nurtured life, the one who stood strong in the face of adversity, and the one whose love for her son, Horus, was unwavering. In the same way, Mary, the mother of Jesus, became a symbol of divine motherhood in Christianity, a mother whose love and grace knew no bounds. Just as Isis cradled her son with tenderness and care, so too did Mary, embracing Jesus with a love that transcended earthly understanding. When we look at Mary and Isis side by side, we begin to see striking similarities. Both women are mothers who embody the essence of protection and compassion. Both are crowned with divine authority, one as the Queen of Heaven, and the other as the Mother of Kings. In their arms they cradle the future, each holding a son who would change the course of history. Isis's Horus was destined to become a great ruler, just as Jesus was destined to bring salvation to humanity. The parallels between the two figures are not mere coincidence. They are part of a greater, timeless truth. Consider the imagery that surrounds both mothers. Mary is often depicted with a serene expression, a crown of stars above her head, and the child Jesus cradled in her arms. She is the picture of grace, humility, and love. Isis, too, is shown holding Horus, her throne-like crown symbolizing her divine authority and maternal strength. The child is at the center of both images, a reminder that motherhood is not just a role, but a divine calling, a sacred trust bestowed by the universe itself. But the similarities don't end there. The stories of these two women are filled with miraculous elements that link them together in a cosmic dance of divine motherhood. In Egyptian mythology, Isis is the goddess of magic and resurrection. When her husband Osiris was killed by his brother Set, it was Isis who, through her knowledge of magic, brought him back to life. Her power to heal, to bring life out of death, was a testament to her divine nature. In Christianity, Mary's role as the mother of Jesus places her at the center of a similar narrative. Through her, life itself is brought into the world, and through her son, death is conquered. Mary's role in the resurrection of Jesus mirrors Isis's own story of life's triumph over death. The connection between Mary and Isis is not just one of divine motherhood. It is a connection of transformation, of power, and of healing. Both women, in their own way, offer a message of hope to the world. In the case of Isis, her ability to heal and restore is seen as a gift of wisdom and strength, a power that transcends the physical realm. In the case of Mary, her role as the mother of Jesus places her at the heart of Christianity's message of salvation, offering a spiritual healing that reaches far beyond the boundaries of time and space. But there is a deeper lesson to be learned from the story of Mary and Isis. It is the lesson of how divine motherhood in all its forms carries with it the power to transform not only the lives of those who receive its love, but also the world itself. The love of a mother is a force like no other. It is a force that shapes the future, that nurtures the soul, and that guides us through the darkest of times. Just as Isis's love for Horus gave him the strength to rise above the trials of life, so too did Mary's love for Jesus empower him to fulfill his divine purpose. In our own lives, we too are called to embody the qualities of these divine mothers. We are called to love unconditionally, to protect what is sacred, and to offer healing to those in need. Whether we are mothers, fathers, or simply human beings, we carry within us the power to nurture and protect, to offer wisdom and healing, and to transform the world around us. Just as Mary and Isis did for their sons, so too can we shape the lives of those we love with the power of our love and compassion. As we reflect on the connection between Mary and Isis, we are reminded of the timeless truth that the divine feminine is not bound by time or place. It exists in every culture, every tradition, and in every heart. It is the energy that creates, nurtures, and sustains life. It is the energy that calls us to awaken to our highest potential, to love with the fullness of our being, and to embrace the sacred within us all. And so, as we stand at the intersection of history and spirituality, we begin to see that Mary and Isis are not just two separate figures. They are one, the same divine energy expressed through different names and forms. The divine feminine, whether it is called Isis, Mary, or any other name, is a force that transcends all boundaries, a force that is eternal, unchanging, and ever-present. And as we embrace this truth, we begin to understand that we are not separate from this divine energy. We are part of it, and it is part of us. Now, as we look toward the next chapter in this story, we ask ourselves, how does this connection between Mary and Isis shape our understanding of the divine feminine today? What does it mean for us, living in a world that so often seeks to suppress the sacred feminine? The answer, as we will discover, lies not in looking outward, but in turning inward to reconnect with the divine feminine that has always been a part of us. And so, we continue our journey, not just through the pages of history, but through the depths of our own souls, where the divine feminine waits to be remembered, to be embraced, and to be fully awakened once again. The connection between Isis and Mary is not merely one of symbolic resemblance, but a deep and profound continuity, woven across the tapestry of history and spirituality. When we look closely, we begin to understand that Mary's role in Christianity is not a clean break from the past, but a continuation of something ancient, something sacred. It's a bridge that connects the old world of Egypt, where Isis was worshipped, with the new world of Christianity, where Mary would be revered as the mother of Jesus. This transformation didn't happen overnight. It was a gradual process, a spiritual evolution that spanned centuries, as ancient traditions found their place in the emerging faith of Christianity. Isis was not simply replaced by Mary. Instead, the essence of the divine feminine that Isis embodied was seamlessly integrated into the Christian narrative, making Mary not a new figure, but a new language for an old truth. The sacred feminine, whether it is called Isis, Mary, or by any other name, is timeless and eternal, transcending the limitations of any one culture or religion. To understand this, we must first look at the religious landscape of the ancient world. The worship of Isis was widespread throughout Egypt and the broader Mediterranean world, particularly in the Hellenistic period. Isis was revered as the mother of Horus, the protector of kings, and a goddess of healing and magic. Her cult was one of the most influential in the ancient world, and she was seen as a maternal figure who could offer protection, healing, and spiritual guidance. When Christianity began to spread through the Roman Empire, it encountered many of the same symbols, archetypes, and ideas that had been circulating in the pagan world for centuries. One of the most important of these was the archetype of the Divine Mother, the nurturing figure who brings life, sustains it, and offers protection and care. This archetype was not foreign to Christianity. In fact, it was essential to the early Christian understanding of the sacred. And so, as Christianity began to establish itself, Mary, the mother of Jesus, began to take on these very same qualities that Isis had embodied. In the early Christian period, Mary was not immediately seen as the Queen of Heaven or the intercessor between humanity and God. Instead, she was first introduced as a humble woman, a servant of the Lord, chosen to bear the Son of God. But as the centuries passed, Mary's role evolved. She became the central figure of a new and emerging theological framework, one that emphasized her purity, her maternal role, and her divine protection. Over time, she became not just the mother of Jesus, but the Queen of Heaven, the divine intercessor who could offer protection to all who prayed to her. In this evolution, we can see how Mary absorbed the qualities of Isis, not by replacing her, but by embodying the same divine feminine energy that Isis had represented. The long blue cloak that Mary often wears in religious imagery, for example, is strikingly similar to the robes worn by Isis. The act of holding a child, Horus in the arms of Isis, Jesus in the arms of Mary, is another clear parallel. These visual similarities are not coincidental. They reflect the deeper continuity between these two figures, one that is rooted not in mimicry, but in the continuation of a sacred archetype. The transformation of Isis into Mary also reflects a broader spiritual process that took place as the ancient world was transitioning into the Christian era. As pagan temples were closed and the old gods were pushed aside, the divine feminine found a new expression in the Christian narrative. It was not that the divine feminine was erased. Rather, it was subtly woven into the fabric of Christianity, making its way into the figure of Mary. This is where the idea of spiritual syncretism comes into play, a blending of spiritual traditions that allows the ancient to coexist with the new. For example, in the early Christian world, Mary was often depicted as a maternal figure who could provide healing and protection to her followers, much in the same way that Isis had done in the ancient world. As Mary's role in the Christian tradition grew, So did the similarities between her and Isis. Just as Isis was seen as a healer and protector, so too was Mary seen as a figure who could intercede on behalf of the faithful, offering them comfort and grace. This was not an accident. It was a natural outgrowth of the spiritual and symbolic continuity that linked Isis and Mary. But it's not just in the iconography of Mary that we see this connection to Isis. It's also in the broader theological ideas that shaped early Christianity. The idea of the Divine Mother, the nurturing force that sustains all life, was deeply ingrained in the early Christian understanding of the world. Mary, as the mother of Jesus, was seen as the one who brought forth the Savior of the world, much in the same way that Isis brought forth Horus, the protector of Egypt. The symbolism of birth, resurrection, and the triumph of life over death is common to both figures. Isis was the goddess of resurrection, and so was Mary, who stood at the foot of the cross, witnessing the death and resurrection of her son. This continuity of the divine feminine, from Isis to Mary, teaches us a powerful lesson. It shows us that the divine is not static. It evolves, it transforms, but it never disappears. The divine feminine, in all its forms, is a force that endures throughout history. It is a force that brings life, nurtures growth, and protects what is sacred. Whether we call it Isis, Mary, or some other name, the essence of the divine feminine is eternal, transcending time and place. As we look to the future, we see that the divine feminine is not a thing of the past, but a living force that continues to shape our world today. Just as Mary carried the essence of Isis, so too does the divine feminine continue to influence the spiritual landscape. It is up to us to recognize this truth and to allow it to guide us in our own lives. In the next chapter of our journey, we will explore how the divine feminine continues to live on in the modern world, and how we can reconnect with this powerful force to bring healing and transformation into our own lives. As we delve deeper into the connection between Isis and Mary, we encounter a fascinating chapter in the history of spirituality, where ancient religious traditions and the emerging Christian faith began to intertwine, blending myth, symbolism, and belief systems. This blending, which we call religious syncretism, is not just a matter of replacing old gods with new ones, but rather the adaptation and transformation of ancient wisdom into new forms, making it accessible to evolving societies. In the early days of Christianity, as it spread through the Roman Empire and encountered various pagan beliefs, the need to reconcile the old with the new became apparent. The teachings of Jesus, with their emphasis on love, redemption, and salvation, resonated deeply with people across different cultures. Yet, many of those cultures were already steeped in their own religious traditions, symbols, and gods, particularly those involving female deities and mother figures. Among the most powerful and enduring of these deities was Isis, the Egyptian goddess of fertility, magic, and motherhood. Isis was worshipped across Egypt and much of the Mediterranean world, not only as a goddess of maternal love and protection, but also as a powerful force of life and resurrection. Her story, filled with themes of loss, rebirth, and the triumph of light over darkness, mirrored the very essence of the Christian gospel. Just as Isis mourned the death of her husband Osiris and later resurrected him, Mary's sorrow at the death of her son Jesus and the subsequent resurrection became central to the Christian narrative. It's essential to understand that religious syncretism during this period wasn't just about grafting one belief onto another. Rather, it was about spiritual continuity, the continuation of themes, symbols, and rituals that spoke to universal human experiences, such as suffering, love, death, and hope. As Christianity spread through the Roman Empire, It didn't seek to obliterate these older traditions, but instead reinterpreted them through a new lens. The archetypes that had served people for centuries, such as the Divine Mother, were not discarded, but integrated into the new faith in ways that made them more accessible and meaningful to people in the context of Christian doctrine. Mary, the mother of Jesus, became a focal point for this integration. In the early Christian tradition, Mary was initially portrayed as a humble woman who bore the Son of God. But over time, as Christianity sought to reach a broader audience, especially in the Roman world where the cult of Isis was still vibrant, Mary's image evolved. She began to take on more and more of the attributes that had once belonged to Isis. The maternal, nurturing aspects of Mary's character were amplified, and soon she was not only the mother of Jesus, but also the Queen of Heaven, the intercessor between humanity and the divine, much as Isis had been. This process of integration is clearly seen in the iconography of both figures. Mary, like Isis, was often depicted holding a child. The child, Jesus, in Mary's arms, mirrors the image of Horus in Isis' embrace. The use of a crown or a throne is another striking similarity. Isis, as the goddess of the throne, was often shown with a throne-shaped crown symbolizing her authority. Mary, in time, became associated with the throne of heaven, symbolizing her divine authority as the Queen of Heaven, a title that resonated deeply with those familiar with the power and reverence of Isis. The continuity between these two figures is not simply superficial, it goes deeper into the realm of theology and spiritual practice. The rituals surrounding Isis were centered on life, death, and resurrection. She was a goddess of healing and protection, especially for those in need. The cult of Isis offered followers a sense of hope in times of darkness, promising that through her divine intervention, death was not the end. In Christianity, Mary's role as a maternal figure who witnesses her son's suffering, death, and resurrection follows a similar pattern. Her grief and her eventual joy at the resurrection of Jesus mirror the themes of death and resurrection found in the cult of Isis. In many ways, the early Christian church didn't replace the figure of Isis. It absorbed her into the Christian framework. As the church sought to evangelize the Mediterranean world, it found it easier to adopt existing religious symbols and reinterpret them within the context of Christ's message. The Divine Mother, a figure that had been central to so many ancient religions, became Mary, but her essence remained the same. She was a symbol of nurturing love, divine protection, and the promise of life after death. This blending of religious traditions wasn't without its controversies. In the early centuries of Christianity, there were debates about the role of Mary, with some factions emphasizing her divinity and others questioning her place in the faith. However, over time, the belief in Mary's special role as the Mother of God became more entrenched. The church began to elevate her to a position of honor, and her image became central in Christian art, liturgy, and devotion. Her motherly qualities, reminiscent of Isis, became one of the most potent symbols of the Christian faith. For early Christians, Mary was not just the mother of Jesus, she was also the embodiment of the divine feminine, a figure that bridged the gap between the human and the divine. As the church moved away from the strict teachings of early Christianity, which focused heavily on male apostles and the masculine image of God, Mary's role grew increasingly important. She became the symbol of a more balanced, inclusive spirituality, one that embraced both the masculine and the feminine, both the human and the divine. The blending of the old and the new also had practical benefits. It allowed Christianity to flourish in a world where many people were still devoted to the ancient gods and goddesses. By incorporating familiar symbols, such as the Divine Mother, Christianity was able to appeal to a wider audience. People were not asked to abandon their old beliefs. Instead, they were invited to see the same truth in a new light. In essence, this syncretism wasn't a forced reconciliation of incompatible beliefs, but a natural merging of spiritual symbols that had already existed in the human psyche. The Divine Mother, whether in the form of Isis, Mary, or any other figure, represents a universal need for protection, love, and nurturing. It speaks to the deepest parts of our human experience, the longing for a connection to the divine, the need for comfort in times of distress, and the hope for life after death. As we reflect on this, we see that the blending of ancient traditions with the teachings of Christianity offers a powerful reminder that spirituality is not static. It evolves, adapts, and grows, embracing the fullness of the human experience. The connection between Isis and Mary is not just a historical curiosity. It is a testament to the continuity of the divine feminine and its central role in the spiritual life of humanity. It teaches us that the sacred is not confined to one culture, one religion, or one time period. It is a living, breathing force that transcends all boundaries. As we continue our journey through history and spirituality, we will explore how these themes continue to resonate in our modern world, and how we, too, can tap into the power of the divine feminine in our own lives. This integration of the old and the new, of the ancient and the modern, is not only a reflection of religious history, but also a guide for how we can live more fully, embracing all aspects of our spiritual journey. As the tides of history shift, we see that the divine feminine never truly disappeared. It simply adapted. What was once sung in praise of Isis now whispers in reverence to Mary, the mother of Jesus. The sacred energy that Isis embodied has not vanished from the world, but rather it has evolved, finding new forms and new expressions. The ancient goddess, with her nurturing presence, her maternal love, and her strength, has returned, not with thunderous proclamations, but through quiet transformation. The return of the ancient goddess does not mean the disappearance of the past, but rather the continuation of a sacred thread that binds the ancient to the modern, the old to the new. This is not a tale of the past being left behind. It is the weaving of history into something greater, something timeless. The divine feminine, as represented by figures like Isis and Mary, transcends time and place, carrying with it an eternal wisdom and power that continues to influence the world. The return of the divine feminine in the form of Mary was not an abrupt shift, nor was it an attempt to erase the past. Instead, it was a recognition that the qualities embodied by Isis, the power of protection, the nurturing love, the wisdom of the feminine, were not only needed but deeply cherished by humanity. As the old gods faded and the Christian church took root, Mary rose to take her place as the mother of Jesus, a role that carried with it the essence of the divine feminine that had been celebrated for centuries. But Mary's role was not simply to replace Isis. She carried with her the same divine energy, the same sacred attributes that had been revered in Isis. The parallels are clear. Both Mary and Isis are symbols of protection and motherhood, offering solace to their followers. They are both depicted with a child in their arms, Horus in the arms of Isis and Jesus in the arms of Mary, each child embodying the promise of life, hope, and salvation. This continuity is not just symbolic. It speaks to the deeper truths about the nature of the divine feminine, a force that is not bound by time or place, but moves with the currents of history, adapting to the needs of the people. The connection between Isis and Mary speaks to a deeper truth. The divine feminine is not an isolated force, but a universal one. It transcends individual figures and religions, manifesting in many forms throughout history and across cultures. Just as Isis took many forms, goddess of motherhood, healer, and protector, Mary too has taken on many forms within Christianity. From the humble servant who bore the Son of God to the Queen of Heaven, Mary has evolved, but her essence remains unchanged. She is the embodiment of the divine feminine, a symbol of love, compassion, and strength. In the modern world, the return of the divine feminine is not just an academic exercise or a historical curiosity. It is a living, breathing force that continues to shape our spiritual consciousness. The teachings of Isis, with their emphasis on resurrection and transformation, are mirrored in the life of Jesus and the message of Christianity. The divine feminine, as embodied in both Isis and Mary, speaks to the eternal truths of life, death, and rebirth, reminding us that the sacred is not confined to one time or place, but is present in every moment of our lives. As we look at the modern resurgence of interest in the divine feminine, we see that it is not a return to the past, but rather a recognition of an energy that has always been with us. The feminine energy, which once found expression in the form of goddesses like Isis, is being rediscovered in our time, not as a relic of the past, but as a vital force that can guide us through the challenges of the present. The return of the divine feminine is about reawakening to the wisdom that has always been there, hidden beneath the surface of history and religion, waiting to be remembered. This return is not just about a goddess or a mother. It is about the reawakening of the qualities that make us human. It is about nurturing, protecting, and loving with a depth that transcends individual experience. The return of the divine feminine is about the healing power of love, the strength found in vulnerability, and the wisdom that comes from embracing the full range of human experience. It is about reconnecting with the sacred, not as an external force to be worshipped, but as an internal energy to be embodied. As we rediscover the divine feminine, we are reminded that it is not something we need to seek outside of ourselves, but something we must recognize within. Just as Mary and Isis both embody the same divine essence, so too do we carry this energy within us. It is the energy that nurtures, heals, and brings life. It is the energy that connects us to each other and to the divine. And it is the energy that calls us to remember who we truly are. The return of the divine feminine, embodied in figures like Isis and Mary, is not just a return to the past. It is a return to the present, a reclaiming of an energy that is as necessary today as it ever was. In a world that often values power, domination, and control, the return of the feminine energy is a reminder that true strength comes from love, compassion, and the willingness to nurture and protect all that is sacred. As we continue to explore the return of the divine feminine in our own lives, we are invited to reconnect with the qualities that Mary and Isis represent. We are called to embrace the wisdom of the divine feminine, not as an abstract concept, but as a living force that can guide us, heal us, and transform our world. The return of the goddess is not just a historical event, it is a personal journey that each of us must take, a journey back to our own hearts, where the divine feminine resides, waiting to be awakened once again. In this journey, we will discover that the divine feminine is not a distant ideal, but a force that is close to us, guiding us through our daily lives. She is not just a figure to be admired from afar, but a power to be embraced and embodied in our own lives. And as we awaken to this energy, we will find that we are not alone. We are part of a greater, timeless story, one that stretches across the ages, linking us to the wisdom of the past and the promise of the future. The divine feminine is calling us to remember, to reconnect, and to embrace the sacred within us all. And as we answer this call, we will find that the return of the goddess is not just a return to the past, but a new beginning, a beginning that starts with each of us, in the depths of our own souls. As we reach the end of this journey, it's impossible not to feel the weight of the wisdom we've uncovered, the sacred threads that connect us across time, space, and culture. The divine feminine, embodied in figures like Mary and Isis, is not a relic of the past. It is a living, breathing force that continues to shape our world today. We've witnessed how Mary, the mother of Jesus, carries within her the essence of the divine feminine that stretches back to the ancient goddess Isis. But this connection is not confined to mythological stories or ancient temples. It is something that lives within each of us, an energy that calls us to remember, to nurture, and to transform. As we look at Mary's image today, we see more than just a religious figure. We see the reflection of a timeless archetype, a symbol of strength, love, and sacrifice that transcends all boundaries. It is this energy that has guided humanity through millennia, whispered through the pages of sacred texts, and radiated through the hearts of those who have been touched by the divine. The divine feminine is not something we need to search for in distant histories or ancient cultures. It is a force that lives inside of us, a call to return to the core of who we are and to reclaim our connection to the sacred. It invites us to embrace our own capacity for compassion, healing, and love, to recognize the sacred in every moment, and to understand that we are part of a much larger, eternal story. And as we look at the world around us today, it becomes clear that the return of the divine feminine is not just about reclaiming a forgotten past, but about ushering in a new era of balance, healing, and spiritual awakening. It is a time to remember that we are not just individuals disconnected from each other, but part of a greater, interconnected whole. The divine feminine reminds us that strength is not about domination, but about nurturing and loving what is sacred. It calls us to heal, to listen, to open our hearts, and to transform the world through the power of compassion and wisdom. As we continue our journey in this world, let us remember the lessons of Mary and Isis, lessons of resilience, love, and divine grace. Let us carry these teachings with us, allowing them to guide our thoughts, our actions, and our interactions with others. And as we do, we begin to see that the divine feminine is not an abstract concept, but a powerful presence that shapes every aspect of our lives. If you felt moved by this journey, if you've experienced even a small spark of understanding about the divine feminine, I invite you to take this wisdom with you. Share it, spread it, and let it inspire you in your everyday life. And if you want to continue exploring the deep mysteries of the divine, of the forgotten truths that history has concealed, make sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel. We have so much more to uncover together, hidden wisdom, timeless truths, and divine stories that are waiting to be rediscovered. By subscribing, you'll be part of this growing community of seekers who understand that there is more to this world than meets the eye, and that the divine in all its forms is something that can be felt, experienced, and lived in every moment. So, if you feel that pull in your heart, that quiet whisper calling you to go deeper, hit that subscribe button and join us on this incredible journey of awakening. We're just getting started, and the path ahead is filled with mysteries and revelations that will change the way you see yourself, the world, and the divine. Like, subscribe, and let's continue to walk this path together, uncovering the hidden truths of the divine feminine and reconnecting with the timeless wisdom that has always been there, waiting for us to awaken. Thank you for being part of this journey. Your presence here is a testament to the power of connection, curiosity, and the willingness to explore the unknown. As we continue to uncover these hidden secrets, may we all remember the strength, love, and wisdom that has been passed down through the ages, and may we carry it forward into the world with open hearts. The divine feminine is calling. Will you answer?